And so yet another installment into the hidden history of the African American fighting man and woman. All right, if you live in Mississippi, I want you to forever remember this, because it actually should be required, particularly if you're an African American. The first African American senator of these United States was Hiram Revels of Mississippi. Now you need to remember that. Start there. Particularly, ladies and gentlemen, because it puts Mississippi on the map at the very top. We are first. One of our first actually, here in Mississippi, and not too many Negroes know that. And you should know that about this African American fighting man. Yeah, you got me right. He was a Christian soldier, a Christian general, a real one at that. You see, he became a chaplain in the United States Colored Troops, and he was quite effective with recruiting African Americans to join the Union forces. Did significant work with battalions in Maryland and Missouri. And he did what most of those former U.S. Colored Troops did. He went back home and became a contributor to his community. He started a high school there in St. Louis, started several churches, and ultimately became the founder of Alcorn College. But before he did that, he got together there with legislators, J.R. Lynch and others who were part of the Mississippi legislature, and they coaxed him to run for the Senate, and run he did. 1869. He ran when, ladies and gentlemen, the Grand Old Party, which is the Republican Party, was the, get this, liberal party. Libertarian. I want you to really get that. The Republican Party is not the party of Lincoln now. That stopped a long time ago. The party of Lincoln was the party of individual rights and the protection of those rights, particularly by the federal government, because states' rights sought to take away the rights of citizens of this country, particularly those who look like me. So Hiram Revels won in 1870 on the Republican ticket, very easily won. He filled the unexpired Senate seat of Jeff Davis. And if by chance Tom Paine is listening at Beauvoir, I hope that you have that established somewhere at Beauvoir in the Jeff Davis Library. Most significant because, you see, Beauvoir was built by formerly enslaved Americans, not unlike Hiram Revels. That is the only historical significance there before Jeff Davis. So there you had it. Oh, well, there you have it. The first African American senator was Hiram Revels, and he was a member of the U.S. Colored Troops. So where do we go from here? Well, I mean, with all of the protest and all. So what do you do? Well, if you're an NFL player, what would you suggest to them? You know, I've read many comments that we have here, and I really appreciate your comments. Also the comments about me here on Facebook Live. We're experimenting with this right now, so when you look at where I'm broadcasting from, it is, in fact, my library, office, studio, and this is what I do in the books, and all you see in the back says my library. That's just part of it, to be quite frank. But I really appreciate the comments, and I'm going to tell you, I pride myself with having the smartest listeners in the world as far as I'm concerned. You guys think analytically. You think with common sense. And that's important to me. Which brings me to what happens now with the NFL. So on Sunday, at the weekend, on Monday, there was the protest of Donald John, which is what most of you thought. I thought it had little to do with protesting the flag or the national anthem. or it had little to do with protesting police brutality when it came to unarmed African Americans being shot at a clip. But speaking of that, I wish you would ask some of those individuals those individuals who are coming forward to talk about how patriotic they are. You should ask them, well, so when did we have the national anthem? No, really. When did this great country of ours, when did this wonderful United States that I live in, that I call home, that I'm going to dare anybody to run me out of, when did my country adopt the national anthem? Was it, 1776? George Washington able to stand for it? Oh, well, even the Pledge of Allegiance. I know what you're doing now. You're going to your computer to check. And you should. It just gets me sometimes. You good God-fearing Americans, sometimes you guys, you fall for the banana in the tailpipe or this fake, phony kind of political patriotism that's divvied out by bigots every day. And that's exactly what we have in the White House. What was it, 1931? 1931, Congress decided that we will adopt Francis Scott Key's poem and subsequently the national anthem. So up until 1931, there was no national anthem, so I guess we weren't patriotic then. How absurd is this? It's just pathetic to me. And then look, I don't even know the three stanzas. What is it, 3 or 4? I read them all here in January just to prove a point. Let me tell you this, ladies and gentlemen, what Colin Kaepernick had done last year had all but simply gone away for the most part up until Donald John mentioned it, bro. I don't know if there was anyone outside of 2 or 3 NFL players who were even taking the knee. No, this is about push the button of those folks in Alabama who are too stupid enough to figure out that there is a significant difference in being an American and acting like some kind of American cutout, some kind of John Wayne fictitious litmus test kind of person, walk around and wear the biggest flag. And let me tell you, I've traveled all over the world, and I'm going to tell you, being an American in itself is being an activist. And by the way, most of the world, no matter what complexion they are, when you say you're an American, you're different. And I don't mean that to say that we're better. You're automatically looked upon as being some kind of experimental being, defiant. In some cases, some look upon us as being arrogant. But most look upon us as they impart some kind of mystery behind being an American, as being brave or stupid. Stupid, never scared. I heard that in that movie, Birth of a Nation, wasn't it? Was it Roots? Roots? So what now? I'm going to open the phone lines here because I like to know that. I've got some ideas as to what the NFL should do now. NFL in total, African American players specifically. And then what about college football? Could you imagine the NFL without African American players? You can't? Well, just go and pull up a news clip going back to 1950-53. Then you could see what football was like before you had African American players. At least 70% of them, you'll be able to. I mean, just take a look at it. Or basketball, for that matter, when Ole Miss, for instance, was refused to play. What was that city, the school there in, I think it's Kansas City. Maybe it was Missouri. They refused to play them because they had one African American player. Just go back and look at just about all sports, actually. Particularly those sports that pit man against man. Go back to boxing, heavyweight boxing, before Jack Johnson. Just take a look at what it looked like, and then ask yourself, is that something you really want to watch? I'm just saying. Or are we getting the best of the best? Is it a competition, you know, that pits, that really pits those individuals who are athletically capable against other athletes who are athletically capable? Major leagues didn't even look like major leagues. I could go to Hansborough Park over there with Mr. Hill and watch Bull Tyler or his brother Bob and see what I saw prior to Willie Mays. It just wasn't there, folks. I'm just going to tell you. You know, I could go to Panthers Park there in North Gulfport. Or for that matter, I could go to Big St. Louis over there behind St. Rose. They had a guy who was a commentator named, they called him Radio. Because, I mean, there were no African-American on radio stations then, but he was the closest thing to it. And when he got on the microphone or the bullhorn, radio would sound like a radio. That's why they called him Radio. So I mean, African Americans said, look, and this is a market. You see, what us conservatives can't grasp is this, and what many African Americans, even younger African Americans, no doubt some of those who are playing can't grasp. What you can't grasp is this: integration was a economic decision. It was. Integration in total. If you go back to the civil rights movement, folks, and you saw the likes of Aaron Henry and Martin Luther King Jr. and you know, Joseph Lowry, so many others. When they were pushing to integrate the schools and be able to, you know, and obviously vote, what that was about was economics. How so, you ask? I got you. Here it is. You see, at that time, if you were to pull up a book, Dark Journey, by Macmillan, he's now deceased. He was a professor emeritus there at USM. Incredible book, Dark Journey. But he lays out exactly the kind of money was being spent in tax dollars. Now listen to me closely. The tax base and the taxes charged to all Americans was the same during the segregated era, right? You had Sandy Daniels, my father, working as a cement finisher, and at that time, cement finishers made more money than principals. He'd brag on that because skilled labor was in great demand. He paid, as an African American, the same tax rate that a Caucasian principal would pay. In other words, they were treated like second-class citizens, but they paid the same taxes. They weren't charged second-class taxes. He paid taxes for the seawall taxes, and couldn't go on the seawall. He paid taxes that went into swimming pools and couldn't get in the swimming pool. So it was like taxation without representation. That's an economic concept now. So when you guys, some of you, and I know I got some white bigots who are listening to me, and I appreciate it. I want to explain this to you because there are some of you think, oh yeah, well, he's just because he's white and he's black. No. African Americans like Dr. Gilbert R. Mason and others were saying, wait a minute, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Now we're paying the same taxes. The school teachers of African Americans were paid at least 40% less than Caucasian teachers. Why was that? In other words, the tax dollars were spent far less in African American environments. I mean, there were oyster shells on Nixon Street and in the alleys. And African Americans were not paying second-class taxes. Are you grasping this? You keeping up with me? So, on the part of African Americans, it wasn't so much we just wanted to get warm and cozy with folks who had blonde hair and blue eyes. By no means. It was like, well, my dad was going, oh, wait, my money, you know, just as in the movie Glory. I mean, you know, our lives is just as important as anybody else. We pay the same price. So we're paying the same tax dollars, then we want the same tax, we want the same access to go to the Greyhound bus station, to go to any bathroom we want to go to. Not because somehow or another the toilets in Caucasian bathrooms were whiter. Just saying. Of course, they never did clean the African American toilets. I can tell you, not at the Gulf Theater. I'm telling you. I don't know. They had an African American janitor. They must tell him, yeah, nah, Ed, you don't have to go up there. But wait a minute. On the other side of that coin, when it came to Caucasians, the business folks, they understood there was a market they weren't even tapping into. Negroes were making money. They saw the so-called black business district. Main Street was humming, bro. Claiborne Avenue was humming. Ferry Street, Lynch Street. Let me just tell you, there was a black business district. I mean, you know, going back to the likes of Black Wall Street here. I'm telling you. From Vicksburg to 4th Avenue in Birmingham. Atlanta. I mean, it wasn't like I wanted for anything when I was a little boy when you had segregated downtown areas. I'm just going to tell you, Howard Avenue didn't have anything for me as much as Main Street. So the white, get this, Citizens Council, usually headed by the major banks in the area, I might add. The president of the major banks were, well, just ask Haley Barbour, he'll tell you that. They began to realize, well, you know what? Those folks got money over there. And this whole concept of not accepting their money because they happen to be Negro, their money's still green. What we've got to now do now is we've got to some way or another convince, we've got to change the narrative here with some of the bigots into realizing that, you know, at the very least, we got to let them in. Now, the way to do this is, of course, we can't pass any laws to allow them in the swimming pools. And, well, you know, heard the song from Strom Thurmond, pull him up. So what we've got to do is just allow, you know, it's better to allow this thing to meander through courts. Yeah. But I'm going to tell you something, boy, there's some money over there. There's some money over there in South Jackson. For those of you on Facebook who couldn't hear that, that was Strom Thurmond. He was basically saying, it was 1959, 1954, somewhere in there, where before he voted from the Democratic Party to the Republican Party. Strom Thurmond said, well, there's just not enough troops in the army to keep for good old Southern bigots to allow Negroes in theaters, swimming pools, and the like. Well, little did he know. The White Citizens Council said, you know what we got to do? We got to get this money. Integration could be good for business. And we've got to do it in such a way that, you know, it keeps the peace. That's what Haley Barbour was talking about when he was saying, well, you know, it was the White Citizens Council that kept the Klan out of Yazoo City. And he was partially right. However, never once think that the White Citizens Council was any less bigoted than the Klan. I'm just saying. It was an economic decision. An economic decision, ladies and gentlemen. For both the Caucasian bigots and for those African Americans who wanted their tax dollars spent on them. That's why we have this thing called integration. Should have been there in the first place. Should have never, I mean, if the Constitution was being applied, I mean. But it wasn't. So with that in mind, the decision I'm going to submit to you here when it comes down to what's happening with the NFL and what's happening with the Colin Kaepernick and what's happening with ultimately how do you prevent African Americans from being treated like second-class citizens again and being shot down by a bigoted police officer, and then protected in some cases by a bigoted judge or jury. The way you do that is look at it from an economic perspective. I'm just going to throw it out there and I'll elaborate later on. But much of what has happened inside these United States has been as a result of the economics. Frazier did a book, Capitalism and Slavery, and he's absolutely on it. It's all about what has driven the world and driven even Christopher Columbus was wealth and the pursuit thereof. There's no doubt. Malcolm X was right, and that revolutions happen because of land and bloodshed. But he stopped short of saying it wasn't just the land; it is the wealth in the land. It is the gold that the land can produce. It is the ability to produce crops. It is able to produce homes, and you got it? That's wealth. That's wealth. Now, whether you like this or not, I know that some of you are religious and you want to think that we all just want to live, it's a wonderful thing. We should love everybody. The truth is that the church is probably one of the wealthiest institutions in these United States here, folks. That's for a cause. That's not just because. You're not paying the building fund just because God loves it. God wills it. Now, the preacher might tell you that, but the reality is that you want a nice church and you want it to represent you, and you want soft pews. And what? Are you fanning us? Are you fanning your Kleenex? I can't believe. Boy, you stop. You ought to stop that. I'm just giving it to you straight. So, Rip Daniels, where are you headed with this? It's very simple to me. The NFL has got to make an economic decision. Probably got to do it sooner than later. NFL, and I dare say the NBA. They are bigots, and I do mean racial bigots. Now, folks, look, I didn't say black or white. There are racial bigots here who are, no matter what you say, hell-bent on what they perceive as a perfect nation, which in many cases is an all, quote-unquote, white nation. That doesn't mean that all Caucasians think that, but it does mean, and Caucasians, some of you know that I know what I'm talking about. There are clusters who are going to be clusters for the rest of their lives. And let me just tell you, those individuals instill as much concern and fear in Caucasians as it does in African Americans. So this has got to be an economic decision, because what's happening now is Donald John has called for the boycott of American business. Now, this is what's so stupid about oxyconservatism. Do you have any idea the effect of what the Saints, let's just give an example, what the Saints bring to the table in the way of impact, economic impact in New Orleans? And I'm not just talking about any given Sunday or Monday. Just economic impact. You know, the amount of money that just the lowly little guy that puts the stripes on the pavement in front of the Superdome. How many families are being fed by this? I'm not talking even about the players. I mean, let me just tell you, I guarantee you, if he was more concerned about the business of the NFL than he was the bigotry, his own bigotry toward the NFL, because 70% is African American, he would compare this with his quest for the carrier plant. Remember that? Wanted to get 1,000 jobs. They're going to move 1,000 jobs to Mexico. Oh, God. This is business. The healthcare is also business. I've expressed that. I've shared that. I've laid that out to you. The NFL is big business. Sports is big business. Now, what's got to happen is the quote-unquote White Citizens Council has got to pull him up. Say, oh, you lost your damn mind. You crazy? These players they're not sewing together these jerseys. They're not making these tennis shoes, these whistles. I mean, those little fingers that do like this, they're not making those. These hot dogs, you know they don't eat pork. Look, you have any idea how this is impacting us? So on the one hand, that group has got to pull him up based on economics. The other hand, that's the owners. Now comes the side of the Martin Luther Kings. In this case, it would be the players. They got to use their economics. They got to use their economics. They've got to say, well, okay, if I'm putting in this much, get this, tax dollars, then this is what I've got to expect out of it. Collectively, ladies and gentlemen, of all the players in the NFL, and I hadn't even brought up the NBA, you're looking at close to I think we calculated in total fringe benefits and everything, 3 to 6 billion a year. Now, I'm not talking about people paying to get in, none of that. I'm just talking about just the players, just what kind of revenue is derived by them, and that they have, get this, and it's very important, they have control over. You see, you got to have control over your resources. You cannot have someone else hold control of your resources. Many of those who, the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and many others went through it. Mike Tyson didn't have control of his resources. The African American players have strength, and the strength comes not from their gluteus maximus or their biceps or triceps. The true strength comes from their ability to collectively utilize their wealth, combine their resources. You do understand what I'm talking about here. Because, look, let me just tell you where this is headed. The question is whether or not they should be made to stand up for the national anthem and so forth. And look, it's a business. Can they be made? Yeah, that could be in your country. This is what you got to do. That's what you got to do. Either you play it. Can they do it? Yeah, I get it. But they have some leverage, and the leverage is both in what they make and what they have the potential to make for others. I'm gonna leave it at that. I will elaborate later on as far as my suggestion as to where they go now. How could they impact change now is the question. To what end? Is the fight with the NFL or with Donald John, or is it with, as Colin Kaepernick put it, a brutal society, police society, which I take issue with. Actually, you've got to be able to take it to the tyrant. I mean, you really do. The tyrant in this case could be one police officer, or in the case of Dothan, Alabama, it could be the entire force. But where you have wealth, you have a weapon. Which brings me to this, and I'm just going to throw this out here quickly. There's a situation, and is this Jackson, Mississippi? It involves a waitress. Yeah, it's in Jackson. I'm just curious whether this is the same thing for you folks who feel that the employer should force employees to do anything. And look, I have my own opinion about it. There is a waitress there at the Georgia Blue. You guys ever been to the Georgia Blue there in Jackson, Mississippi? Yeah, I think I've seen the Georgia Blue. I don't know. I think I have. Is it on Capitol Street? Nevertheless, in the Georgia Blue, the waitresses wear blue jeans. That makes sense, huh? Georgia Blue. Well, there's a young waitress who works there, and she is Pentecostal. So she'll wear blue jeans. Well, she doesn't want to wear slacks, jeans, the pants. She wants to wear a skirt. So the manager say, no, you can't do that. This is a requirement. This is the uniform. You gotta wear the jean. Like someone saying you gotta stand up for the national anthem. You got what I'm saying to you? I mean, them's the rules. Well, I want you to know she filed a lawsuit. She certainly did. Took it to the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, and on Tuesday, the Georgia Blue was sued. Let's see. The federal lawsuit filed Monday said Mississippi-based company failed to reasonably accommodate the religious beliefs of this girl. What's her name? Katoya Watkins, who told Georgia Blue manager that her religion prohibits her from wearing pants. She's Pentecostal. I wonder if they allow her to bring a snake in. What? I don't know. Maybe they don't do that. Look, I'm not putting it down. I'm not familiar with it. Watkins received no response from the manager, but was fired when she went to work her first day in November 2015 wearing denim skirts. Soon after that, the manager left Watkins a voicemail message saying he had spoken with the owner and the restaurant and would not stray away from the dress code policy. Now, I know what you're going to say. Man, how easy could it be? Just put on the pants. Just put the pants on. Like, just stand up. You don't have to take a knee. Or you see, hey owner, it's still a denim skirt. What difference does it make? I'd rather see a girl in a skirt and pants anyway. What about you? What's your preference, bro? Pants, skirt? Huh? See, you gotta pick one or the other. You like skirt? Why? Why do you like? Well, you can't. They can't hear you. They can't hear you, man. Well, I could. I don't know. It's just something about the mystique of skirts, dresses. You know what I mean? No, don't take this wrong, ladies, but there are men as fine as you. I don't want to look at them, but I mean, it's like, you know what I mean? And I just got news for you. You know, you see the curves and you go, well, that a man or a woman? Like this guy that's playing for the Cardinals. You ever see him walk the wide receiver? I watched the last 2 minutes. But I mean, it's like, that skirt thing, I think, is, but that skirt thing is like, it's got some skin action. Yeah, I guess you're right. You're Pentecostal. Ooh. I like ankles. Nothing like a firm. Oh, what? You don't? You don't like? I do. You know, the worst looking female's ankle I've ever seen was just beautiful. Look at that, look at that. You know, I sure do miss our last First Lady. Don't you? Good God. Well, all right, you've got your marching orders. We're going to go to the phones when we come back here, folks. Good morning, Beau Rivage, Madison County, Liberty, rural Rankin County, all you guys. We'll be back.